Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you. There we go. So I'm not going to talk in too much depth about actual campaigns. I'm not going to talk about plastics in any depth, but I'm sure you're much more interested in the way we pursue our campaigns. So Greenpeace's job is to save the world. That's the way we look at it. We haven't done so badly over the last 50 years, so I feel pretty good about that. The question is asked, how do we go about it, quite rightly? And we recognise a number of audiences that we need to reach and a number of different groups we have to convince of the rightness of our causes and the solutions to the problems that we've identified. First, of course, is the public. Everybody has to be aware of a problem. And with plastic, it's pretty well known. It's on the TV every day, which was a great stroke of luck for us to have David Attenborough talking about plastics just at the time we were launching a campaign. There was a connection there, but to get the authoritative voice, the respected voice of someone like David Attenborough talking about our own campaign really puts us miles ahead. So we do want to convince the public of the need for change, but it's not necessarily the public that is going to affect the change. We have decision makers, we have government departments in particular, and local, national, international governments and decision-making bodies who we really have to persuade to make a change. So how do we do it? Well, here's one example. Our Beluga expedition in 2017, that was one of our ships. We took it around the north coast of Scotland, meeting the public with the aim of collecting data, scientific data from research, and collecting evidence of public opinion which we could then present to government, particularly the Scottish government, to persuade them to introduce a deposit return scheme on bottles. So what we have here is a nice clear problem. Plastic is choking our oceans. A solution, or at least a partial solution, which would be to encourage people to return and recycle their plastic by introducing a deposit return scheme. Something some of the older ones will remember. One or two smiles there. I remember threepence on a bottle of dandelion and burdock. Right. So having persuaded the decision makers, or at least targeted the decision makers. I was trying to get back to there. There's another group that we have to target, and that's what we call the villains. Unusually, as a campaigning organisation, we are prepared to name and shame. We will say, your organisation, your behaviour, your government, your department is largely responsible or partly responsible for the mess that we've discovered. And these guys, we found, the biggest, best-known manufacturer of single-use plastics, wouldn't give us any data about how much plastic they were producing. We decided we're going to go and find out for ourselves. So we calculated roughly what number of plastic bottles Coke were making. It's a very large number of billions, something like 100 billion a year. We found out that their average recycled content was about 7%, 25% in the UK, but worldwide it's 7%. So we went into action. Having been sure of our facts, we then go and visit Coke. We try to persuade them that their actions are wrong. We don't go straight in with chaining ourselves to the railings. That comes next. Coke didn't want to talk to us. They wouldn't engage with us. So we did go straight to the direct action. And that's the thing you may be most interested about. So I'll just spend 30 seconds to a minute on non-violent direct action. There comes a point when you can only talk so much. There comes a point when the gravity of the situation and the seriousness of the problem are so severe and so obvious, once we've demonstrated it, that we have to move into what we call non-violent direct action. And direct action has one single purpose. It's to make an organisation or society or a group of people so aware of the problem and feel that there is such a tension and groundswell of resistance to the problem that they've caused that they are forced to confront the problem. Quite simply, they have to say to themselves, if we change, these silly buggers from Greenpeace will go away. That's what we want. That's what we want. I'm pleased to say that after doing so many things, we subvertised in Waitrose, we hung fake adverts on bottles of Coke, we delivered a 2.5-ton statue outside their main front door so they couldn't get in or out. They decided that they'd had enough, and I'm pleased to say, and all kudos to Coke, in all seriousness, all kudos, they have agreed to up the percentage of the recycled plastic content in their bottles. So it's a start. We'll hold them to account, we'll monitor them all the while, but that's how we change the world. Thank you.
Any questions or any direct action you want to perform now?
Always ready for it.
That's what he thinks. Okay.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to sort of follow on from there, really. So this is headlining a bit of a change of approach for Kent Wildlife Trust. Kent Wildlife Trust, biggest conservation organisation specific to Kent, 32,000 members, 80 or so land holdings, sort of across 8,000 or so hectares of the county. And I guess the biggest point I want to make, the take-home message, is that wildlife is in absolute crisis, and this is not something that is just a aesthetic thing or a cultural thing. This is actually becoming something which can affect human well-being going forwards, even human survival. So the UK, 189th most nature-depleted country in the world. Ask yourself if that's acceptable. According to the government agency that monitors this stuff, we're basically not doing enough to sort that out. We've got massive declines in insect abundance, which should be of concern to everyone at the moment. So this is not rare species that are blinking out, as has been the case for the last sort of 50 years or so. We're talking about things like 75% loss or thereabouts in the abundance of flying insects. So that's everything flying around in the air, reducing by 75% in the last couple of decades. The wildlife that we have left is being squeezed into smaller and smaller strips around more and more intensively farmed land. And when you look at basic habitat loss, you're looking at sort of 97% loss of flower-rich meadows, the same sort of stats for ponds, etc. So the good news, if you like, Parliament has declared an environment and climate emergency. So to some extent, MPs are now recognising that there are kind of tipping points that are occurring, and that if we don't do something, we're going to be in trouble. My point would be that I don't know what they're actually going to do yet, and I don't think that's enough to just declare an emergency and hope it then goes away. We actually have to have action, and it's got to be quite deep-seated action, particularly when, if you look at the loss of bees, we're looking at the loss of potentially a third of all of the food in our supermarkets if we lose bees. Soil, a living system, and yet we continue to poison it. Broad-scale use of insecticides and pesticides is the way that farming is done. It then washes into rivers. We then, as the consumers of what we hope is clean water, pay for that to be cleaned out by the water companies. It is a deeply unsustainable system. We're actually washing it away in great quantities as well, which is not particularly helpful. So what we're talking about is restoring wildlife abundance and doing it rapidly. And that, if we do it, will improve community resilience to things like climate change, which are being layered on top of all the things that I've been talking about and making it exponentially worse. So as I say, we don't really know what's going to be done yet. We've got warm words around the 25-year environment plan and other things, but we also know there is a significant voice in the background from climate deniers and industry lobbyists on a number of fronts, and that has weight. We also know we've got massive political turmoil going on, which is basically sort of just shadowing all of this out of the way, and we know that off the back of that there might be significant opportunities. So it's a time of change when there are both huge risks and huge opportunities. One of the opportunities is that farmers start to get paid for delivering what people are calling public goods. So actually for making sure that farmland contains wildlife and we keep our pollinators, etc. But that's a huge cultural change for the farming industry. And we've also got the risk that environmental standards will be further watered down. So we are at kind of a tipping point in terms of the politics of this as well. And we may not have a chance to turn this around. We've probably got 10 to 20 years on both the climate front and some people think actually on the insect front to do anything about this. We've also got lags in the system. So, pesticides, for example, work their way through the system over a period of decades. Even if we stopped using them now, we would still be seeing those declines going on. That's the same with carbon in the atmosphere as well, too. So how do we change it? Well, exactly as we were just being told, we need, first of all, a huge slice of public opinion on our side. We're beginning to get that, maybe. around the kind of blue planet effect, things like that. But generally, I don't think people understand how serious the situation is. We have to put pressure on decision makers, and we have to change the political and economic landscape in favour of large-scale restoration of nature. Of course, we've got Extinction Rebellion going on at the moment. We've got people saying that maybe there is this kind of tipping point in public opinion. My fear is that at the moment, we are just talking to each other, and we need to change that. So what's KWT's response? Well, we are going to turn into a more campaigning-focused organisation. We're going to work a lot more on partnership at every level we can, and we're going to be explicit about the ambition of restoring abundance of wildlife. Effectively, we need something like 30% of Kent's land area and marine area as well managed for an abundance of wildlife. Those are the kinds of numbers that we're talking about across the globe if we're actually going to turn this around and ensure that human society is resilient going forwards. So we're looking for new partnerships at multiple levels. We've put out our ambition through a brochure we just put together. I won't go through all the details of this. We're talking to donors about it. It's all about, the mantra that we had sort of 25, 30 years ago off the back of Rio. It's about acting local and thinking global. It's been around for ages, but it's time to do it. So in Kent, we effectively need wilder towns and cities. We need to make sure that every space that's available to us, from gardens to community allotments, churchyards, etc., are actually managed to allow an abundance of nature to come back. So that means, in those places you don't want pesticides being applied, for example. In France, they've actually just banned all domestic use of sort of garden products with pesticides, and you can't buy them anymore. We need to reconnect children with nature. This nature deficit disorder that's going on, people won't care about nature and won't realise how important it is unless they, from an early age, realise it. And we've got to make sure that happens. Lots of kids are not getting out into green spaces anymore at all. And we've got places that we can do that. As one of the things to kind of promote this type of joined-up thinking, we're going to be launching a Wilder Kent Award for communities, for individuals, for schools, and we'll be putting details up on that so that hopefully you can all get involved and start to promote that. So that's kind of the local stuff. Again, locally, people can volunteer. Wellbeing link there is well known. Social prescribing, comes through there. We actually need partners to deliver that with as well. So again, a plea, if you're interested in that, working with us on that, then do come forward. We've got colleagues down here on this table at the front who would be delighted to talk to you. And then sort of on the more kind of local political front, there's been some great work done in Nottingham recently on a manifesto for nature. It was put together by community groups that Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust stopped working with. And we're thinking, well, why not have Wilder, Maidstone, Ashford, Canterbury, all having local manifestos for nature, talking to local decision makers, because what we've got to do is we've got to have the local action, we've got to have our local decision makers on side and pressured by local communities to do more, and then we've got to feed that up to the next level. And the next level is more direct action type stuff. There is a mass lobby, which I'm going to promote here and now. 26th of June, it's WWF Friends of the Earth, a whole bunch of people coming together with Climate Coalition, basically making the point that the time is now. Action is required now. Talk to your MPs, try and turn up, try and get your local groups you're working with to attend as well. Effectively, there is still the opportunity to turn this around, but we have to do so now, and we have to do it by working together. We're up for it. We hope you are too. See you soon.
Slight typical hit to your leg.
Yeah, apologies. Cool. Oh, that's quite a big thing. I'm just going to solve the technical issue by getting some help.
Technical hitch has been solved. Amazing. Round of applause.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris and I'm from Social Farms and Gardens, and it's fantastic to be here today, and great to see so many diverse different organisations in the room. I'm going to quickly talk to you a bit about Social Farms and Gardens and then take you on a bit of a journey quite quickly that shows how, through merging two organisations together and the challenges that that brings with it, and the success of a long advocacy campaign leads to successful funding success from government. So Social Farms and Gardens is a membership charity. We work right across the UK with around 1,300 members. Our members range from small inner city, urban, gritty community gardens, right the way through to rural, large-scale care farms, often based on a commercial farm. And our city farms, which founded the movement originally going back about 40 years, also form a considerable part of the organisation. We also run the School Farms Network with around 125 school members, those schools which have farming activity as part of the curriculum, as part of the school grounds, and using farming and growing to encourage children to both understand nature and understand where their food comes from. And as mentioned so many times earlier, we love working in partnership. We work with a wide range of organisations, both locally and nationally, and are really strong in forming some of our regional networks, London, Nottingham, Manchester, for example. Wide range of funders, wide range of partners, including government in the 4 countries, but also including corporate sponsorship, and a wide range of other packages as well. So quite a wide-ranging organisation. We deliver and support our members in terms of health and well-being, in terms of education, in terms of environmental benefits, and in terms of building community right across the spectrum. But the important thing about the organisation is it's membership-led, and it's our members that count. So all of our members have opportunities to become involved in the governance of the organisation through being on the board or through contributing in other ways. And all of our members membership is free, and all of our members contribute to the running of the organisation. So the journey. As I said earlier, Social Farms and Gardens was formed a year last April by the merger of 2 long existing community-based environmental organisations, the Federation of City Farms and Community Gardens and Care Farming UK. And that merger was an interesting journey, but as I'm just going to talk through now quite quickly, it enabled the merged organisation to successfully tender for £1.4 million from government as part of the 25-year Environment Plan scheme. As I say, a bumpy road. If we go back to 1980, the Federation of City Farms was founded by the original city farming members in London particularly. So hold that thought in mind. What I want to focus on initially is the care farming side of things. Care farming is the use of farming practices to support individuals with a defined health need, and to enable them to undertake activities which improve their well-being, improve their mental well-being, and generally support them through a specific course of intervention. Care farming has its origins in the National Care Farming Initiative, which was formed as a response to the foot and mouth crisis. And through its early years, in the early thousands, through a programme of advocacy and really strong pushing within government, bearing in mind this organisation had only 2 members of staff at the time, so it was a very small organisation relatively, but they punched above their weight in terms of advocacy and profile and generally got Natural England on board. Through the provision of evidence and the collection of data, the two individuals proved that care farming was of value, and also did a lot of work around the potential for scaling up. So showing that evidence base, that evaluation, understanding what's going on out there and understanding what the need is one of the key routes to success, really. And as I said earlier, the last piece of the jigsaw, a year last April, the coming together of the Federation of City Farms, Community Gardens and Care Farming UK to form Social Farms and Gardens. So a new organisation, new board, bringing two boards together, bringing policies together. You can imagine what that involved. But overall, very successful, and now a much stronger, bigger organisation. And what that allowed us to do was to bid for the DEFRA money back in November of last year, with the outcome in January. And this wouldn't have happened without bringing the two organisations and merging the two organisations together. Allowed us to now be delivering the Growing Care Farming project, which is a 4-year project. It's funded by DEFRA as part of that 10 million from the 25-year plan. And it intends to increase the number of care farming places right across England to 1.4 million in 4 years. And that's currently 400,000, so an increase of just over a million places in that 4 years. We're 4 months into the project, and it will be coming to the southeast as part of the second phase of the rollout. So please keep an eye on that. But hope I've given you a bit of a flavour of the story, but how bringing together two well-established organisations can actually benefit the whole, and ultimately benefit care farmers across England with this programme. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions for our panel members? Oh, we've got a question. Wow, look at that.
Hi, my name's Anna Stanford. I'm a coordinator for Swale Friends of the Earth, and I just wanted to carry on the theme of working together, which is obviously something that's coming through really strongly. We've done work with John and Greenpeace on climate change, and we've just kicked off a project to rewild the recreation ground at Faversham, where we'll be working with Kent Wildlife Trust and other environmental groups. So I think it's a really important theme. We're all in our own little bubbles, and I think with the crises that we're facing, we need to work much more closely together. But one of our priorities now, and has been for last year, but I've got a really big push, is on climate change. And we're having, like you said, councils declaring climate emergencies, but the question is, okay, so what do we do? And it's really important to be promoting solutions that people can understand and can get really involved in, rather than just talking about the crisis itself, because I think that really sometimes disempowers people. So the solutions around all the new houses going up, how do we make them zero carbon? How do we support renewable energy projects in our area? What practical steps can local authorities do, and community groups as well as individuals? So my question is really, how can we would really like to set up an action group specifically on climate change locally to really up the ante. So how do we coordinate that? We've got some support from National Friends of the Earth, which is also pushing this forward. We've had some training. What we really want to do is to reach out to other environmental and community groups locally who would like to get involved in this issue-specific campaign, so that we can take advantage of that groundswell of concern from younger people, and we see students striking. You know, we can then talk to them and work with them and give them support in what actual practical action we can take.
If I may, I just jumped in to try and give an answer to that. And you're right, we groups need to work together. But I'm going to pose a solution to the specific question you raised. How can we really get to councils to declare a climate emergency and that kind of thing? And we already have an organisation that sprang up about 6 months ago, Extinction Rebellion. You mentioned it there. I'm a member. I will declare an interest. So I'm Greenpeace and Extinction Rebellion. But Extinction Rebellion is already doing much of what you described, what we have been doing separately and individually as well. And I think we are doing it pretty damn well. So my fear would be that if we were to form an additional climate change group, or whatever we wanted to call it, we're actually in danger of diluting the effort that other groups have already started. As I say, I have a biased opinion towards Extinction Rebellion, having been so close to them. But I believe we are doing the very job that you were partially describing there. The rebellion includes many members of Friends of the Earth, of Greenpeace, of yourself, your colleagues and friends. We're all in this together. So my fear would be the danger is that we'd actually dilute much work that's already established and doing so well by trying to reinvent another pressure group.
I think, however, I'd agree with everything you say there, but I think there is a lot of power in local advocacy as well. So I think, whether or not it's through the sort of lens we'll be pursuing sort of the wilder, in your case, Faversham type thing, you can always make the link up to this, acting locally and having a global effect. I mean, in terms of the restoration of nature at scale, we know that will take care of up to 30% of current emissions and actually potentially keep us down below 1.5. I think one of the messages of optimistic messages to give people is that they can make a difference. But I also think that lobbying of local MPs, local councillors to actually then follow through, because it affects so many decisions, as you say, around housing, the way that housing, when it inevitably comes, because it will, we can't stop all of it, is actually done and made as good as possible. All of that is stuff that can be affected by good local lobbying, and we will definitely be up for supporting that.
Yeah, and maybe just to add that there's a place for lobbying, there's a place for advocacy, there's a place for action, but every one of us, all our small community groups, all our large community groups, can all do something, whether that's planting more trees, whether that's being more diverse in our planting, if you're a growing group. If you're in the rural farming community, then there's huge opportunities there to take direct action by doing something biodiversity-wise, using less plastic-wise. So yes, the lobbying and the advocacy are really important and they will make the change, but also every single one of us can make a change ourselves as well.
Mics on, that's when we get feedback, so we've got one mic on here now.
Hello, my name's Sasha and I'm from Plastic Free Faversham, and we probably need to speak. I'm sorry, was it Claire? Anna, hello. Funnily enough, my question was along the same lines. We've got a really active community in Faversham, and as Anna highlighted, we've got quite a new Liberal town council who are keen and have got a new subcommittee looking at environmental and sustainability and biodiversity. I think our issue is there are so many groups. As Friends of the Earth, we're Plastic Free Faversham, which is kind of independent from Surfers Against Sewage, but we are also a plastic free community. Our group is becoming much more aware that the issue is more waste, and plastic-free community doesn't really sit well with us at the moment. And we're looking more at waste, circular economy, and very much the reuse, reduce message. I think a lot of communities are now, and funnily enough, I'm a supporter of Greenpeace, and I had a chat to someone who kindly called me and managed to persuade me to up my monthly contribution. I then got an email, having discussed that I did work with Plastic Group, suggesting that I set up a Greenpeace group in Faversham as well. There are so many groups, and really I'm wondering whether there are any case studies of towns that have got themselves together. And I think a lot of communities, there's a lot of sudden change where you can sort of come under one umbrella, and examples of that have worked well.